CHATS with Frank Palmer, the marketing, media, and communications talk show. Presented by LifeWorks.
Good morning, or good afternoon, I should say, Tony, because you're in Toronto, and what's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that?
About 1:30 now, Frank.
Yeah, and what's the weather like there today?
Oh, now it's nice. It's actually bloody hot out. It's been we were lucky we haven't had any rain, and it's BC weather now here, so we're not complaining.
In all honesty, the weather has been a little bit different this year. It's been kind of turbulent. When you expect it to be nice, it's not nice, and when it's supposed to be, just the opposite.
No, we've been lucky. It's been great, and it's nice to see you and to be able to do this. It's a real pleasure.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the turbulence that we've been living in the last couple of years in the advertising world. The ups and downs and the changes that have taken place. And I don't think I've ever seen this many changes in our industry for years and years and years. And
no, it's never a dull moment. And
for sure. And I know that you lived through some of this that we can talk about a little bit in your career a bit later, but I wanted to tell the viewers today, Tony, about a little bit about your interesting career. So does that work for you?
Yeah, totally. Go ahead.
You were born in Toronto?
Yeah, born in Toronto. Lived in Montreal for a couple of years, and I want everyone to know that I was alive when the Leafs last won the cup, but I wasn't very old.
Hockey, we won't get into hockey. They've had some trouble this year too, but it looks like a pretty good series coming up. So.
Yeah.
You went to the Jarvis Collegiate Institute, which I understand to be the oldest public high school in Ontario, founded in 1807. We have some beautiful pictures here that I'm going to show the audience here today.
Look at that. Yes. Looks the same.
Isn't that beautiful?
That's it. Yeah.
Did you have to stay in the building? I mean, was it a place that you had accommodation, or was it just some place?
No. I know it looks a bit like that kind of building. No, but it's just an old high school in Toronto. And the interesting thing about Jarvis was that it brought in kids because of where it's located in the city from all different socioeconomic groups. So, some kids from Rosedale were there, kids from Regent Park and St. Jamestown, like all different walks of life, which was and back then it was pretty multicultural school back in the early 80s. Even then, so it was and great sports and academics. It was a terrific school.
What courses were you taking at that time?
Well, I mean, I took a lot of English and history and geography and phys ed when you could still get credits for phys ed. I did that. Yeah, and, played a lot of sports there.
And after you went to the University of Toronto, where you studied political science and history.
Yes, which prepares you for advertising.
It would have so, but did it?
It did. I mean, in the end, it did. We can get into that a bit, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do as I was approaching graduation, and I saw a job posted in the Career Center for a media buyer at Ogilvy and Mather, and I asked my dad, who some people might know was an advertising guy himself, and Eric Miller, and he said, "Yeah, do it. See if you like it. See if you like the business," he said. So I liked the business. I didn't love being a media buyer, but it gave me some insight.
I remember there was a story. I don't know if you remember one of the interviews I had with Keith Reinhardt, where he went to apply for a job as an art director, and they said, "We don't have a job for an art director, but we have a job for a writer."
That's right. Seemed to have done well.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Did you know at that time that you wanted to get into marketing and advertising, or is that just?
Well, I was a good writer. I always sort of the comments on my work in university and high school was, this is really well written. Maybe you could have had a little more detail, and so I knew that I could write. And so I was trying to think about a way in a career where I could get to do that. And I kind of worked my way in, because after I spent years as a media buyer, I was looking at the account executives, and I said, that looks really cool because they get to meet the client. What I'm doing isn't that cool or interesting, but I want to do that. So I got a job as an account exec And I did that for a couple of years. And that was way better. But also then I said, but what those writers are doing, that's really what I want to do. And so I put a portfolio together and got it, and it was able to make the switch.
Yeah, well, sometimes I thought maybe you might have gone to be a professor or a teacher or something like that.
No, my youngest brother is a professor, but I liked university a lot. I didn't, love it enough to want to be a professor, but I do enjoy teaching, and I've done some of that through my career. I really do actually enjoy that.
Well, what I didn't really know until I started doing a little background on you, that you were really good at sports. And
yeah,
so
it's just kind of embarrassing. I was athlete of the year at Jarvis Collegiate, and I was a swimmer. I had some city records, and then after that, went to U of T, and I was everyone was a swimmer, everyone was a sprinter on the swim team, and so I thought I need to find another sport, and rowing was one that I looked at because it had early mornings, and I was used to getting up early, so I became an oarsman, and I really enjoyed that and excelled far more in rowing than I had done in swimming, and so.
Actually, you won the Henley 3 times in the Henley Canadian Championship. I mean, that's a pretty prestigious sporting event.
Yeah, we it was a lightweight then. I may not look like it now, but I was a lightweight, they called it, and then and so I had a really good rowing career, and won a lot of medals doing that, and it was great. It was a great sport. It is a great sport.
I did a history to it too, because it said in the notes that I read that the Henley Regatta started in the 1880s, and that the first championship for the newly formed Canadian Amateur Rowing Association. So today, from what I understand, the race is 2,000 meters.
It is. It was then.
And did you just find an interest in doing this? I mean, how did you become involved?
Well, because I went down to rowing is one of the few sports where that you can come to it later in your sporting career and get to the top of the mountain. Whereas you can't just decide at the age of 18 you're going to be a swimmer or you're going to be a football player. So I would liken it to, bobsledding, where you see these guys that have done other sports and then they become bobsledders. So rowing is such a sport like that, where you can come to it late. And most of the people who are on the national team or the Olympic team and so on came to it in university after having done other sports. And it just requires a lot of discipline. It's painful at the end of those races. You have to be able to process that pain and go into the pain cave and kind of come out the other side. And even though every fiber in your being is telling you to get out of the boat halfway through, you don't, because you're there with your teammates and you got to get to the end. And so those races, like you say, they're 2,000 meters, but there's races in the fall that are a lot of fun called head races, and like Head of the Charles and Head of the Trent University in Toronto, and all these. Head of the Charles is one of the biggest head races, they call it, because it's timed. You go one after the other down the river. And those are 15 minutes or so. So those are great too.
You're taking a lot of Roebuck or Tylenol after those races?
Sorry, what was that?
Taking a lot of Tylenol after those races?
Still a lot of Tylenol, and beer seems to help. There's always beer at the end.
Well, it sounds like you really enjoy sports and what you're doing, and you still canoe, from what I understand, play hockey, tennis, curl, go skiing.
Yeah. And, you got to keep moving, Frank. You got to keep moving.
Yeah, right. And somewhere I read that you play the guitar.
I do. I'm a certified campfire guitarist. I was just down on a weekend with some buddies down in Ellicottville, and we all had our guitars, and no paying gigs. I can assure you.
Paying gigs.
No.
Yeah, Mr. Brady will give you one of his guitars that he has.
I've seen his collection. It is more extensive than mine. Yes.
B.B. King. Maybe he'll give you the big B.B. King guitar.
I've heard the B.B. King story many times. Yes.
Did you ever want to become a pop singer?
No. I can sing, but again, it's for friends and family, Frank. It's not going to happen here.
Well, you're married. You have 4 children, 3 girls and a boy. Do any children have the same kind of interests as you?
Yeah, 3 of the 4 kids were really good athletes. My younger 2 are big volleyball players and beach volleyball players, and both play lacrosse for their universities now. They were lacrosse players earlier too. So we taught all the kids to ski by taking them skiing out west every winter and leaving them clutching the fence at the teaching area as we went off and skied. but yeah, they do. And my youngest actually taught herself to play guitar, so that's nice to see.
Well, you brought it up in the early parts of our conversation. You said that your first agency job was a media buyer for Ogilvy and Mayer, you know. And how did that come about? Was it just an article that you read and
Well, yeah, it was like I say, it was an ad in the Career Center, and it looked like a way in, right, to see if I could get into the business and like the business. And ironically, my first boss, Ann Myers, lives up the road from me here in Toronto, and she was great because she could see pretty early on that wasn't like I wasn't going to be a long-term media buyer or planner, but she was patient, and it gave me an understanding of the business and that side of the business. And so once I got in, like I said, my dad said, see if you like the business. I did. And then it was up to me to kind of find my way and try different things until I found, to try to self-actualize within the business and do the thing where I could excel the most.
And then you went to camp advertising from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I went there as a, I went to, I think I'm trying to remember the order, but I was an account executive at SMW, which doesn't exist anymore. And then camp advertising. And it was at camp, which then became Mac Smith McIntyre Vict, which is now Agency 59, that John McIntyre let me switch from being an account exec to being a writer. And so, my wardrobe changed overnight. You see,
you went from a media buyer to a suit.
And then to a writer. So I think the time as a suit really served me well because I can empathize with what the account people have to do and the challenges they have in the business because I did that for a couple of years. So
and you went to X with Smith or X with McIntyre as a copywriter. I remember. Remember that story, what we mentioned a little bit later about what Keith Reinhardt had done and took that job. But and I guess you had the same kind of feeling. Well, I'll take that job. I'll take that job to get business.
Yeah, and John knew that I wanted to become a copywriter, and I had my book, and I'd shown him my portfolio, and so he said, "Yeah, we have a need, and we'll just let you switch here," which was huge. It gave me my first chance at it, and I loved it. I was hooked. So
you've been a media buyer also, right?
That's right. Media account. I haven't been in accounting. I'm not going to do it.
Going to go to the accounting department? No. I want to be doing that. Then you went to what was is it Ranscombe and Co?
Yeah, Ranscombe and Company. Jim Ranscombe, who Jim Ranscombe. And he really, Jim was my mentor, and he taught me the craft of copywriting. He's a brilliant writer and advertising guy, and he had a boutique agency, and he had a bunch of young people that were there creating advertising for a range of clients, many of whom are still in the business now, like Lance Martin and Siobhan Dempsey and Hayes Steinberg and Les Seuss and others who came through there, and really it was fantastic. We did great work, and it was just really like a masterclass of how to create advertising. And I was there for a number of years with Jim.
Tony, do you think, and I know you went from becoming a creative director or associate creative director, then you went to become a vice president creative director at Sharp Blackmore, and it just seems to me that because of all the experience you've had in different levels of being a media buyer and copywriter, now creative director, it seems to really rounded yourself out as to understanding this business from all sides.
Well, I think it certainly helped, right? Because I could see what the other people in the agency were going through and how challenging that is, and also by doing that, you realize you can't just be this sort of cliched, pouting, creative person, right? It taught me the discipline to try to see things from all different angles, and that's served me well through my career. I think to be able to look at problems and look at the other people in the agency and what they're dealing with, and then understand those client problems because you're talking to them too, and so it looks like a kind of a progression like this, but really it's just experience, right? And I think you know more now at your age than you did 20 years ago. And I just think you're always it's a bit of an off ramp here, but you're always, learning more and more, and the business is continually interesting and always challenging, and you can't possibly know it all. So that's what I find fascinating about it.
Well, it's almost like at times, and I've just thought of this metaphor right now, that you're talking to yourself in a mirror sometimes, because what you're the account guy, and then you're talking to the creative guy and wondering what they're going to say in return, and you got to be a little bit open to saying what it is from their side and why.
Well, right. And I think it was Bernbach who said that he kept piece of paper in his pocket, right, that said they might be right. And I think that's right. And I think I've never forgotten that, because often they are right and often I'm wrong. And so you have to be prepared to realize that and pivot. And also we're all in this together, I think. And so you're more likely to sell good work through if you have the team with you trying to go into the same direction.
Yeah, I've always remembered one of the Bernbach or Keith Reinhardt's when he said, listen more.
Listen more, right. But yeah, it's better. What's that saying? It's better to be silent and have people think you a fool than to speak and have them know it for a certainty. So
we all know a lot of people that don't practice that.
Right.
Yeah.
So yes, listening is good.
Where are they today?
Where are they today? Right. Exactly.
And then you went to as senior vice president, creative director at ACLC Inc., and then CD partner at Smith Roberts Creative Communications. Now, I can't remember the name of those companies, or don't remember who they are, but you obviously would.
Yeah. ACLC, I left Sharp Blackmore Euro to go to ACLC. I spent a couple of years there. They had some really interesting brands like Mercedes and Toshiba and Swiss Chalet. And I was there for a couple of years, and then went to be a partner at a boutique. I wanted to see if getting your name on the door, which you have and you've done, whether that was for me or not. And I really enjoyed working with Malcolm, and we're still friends to this day. But I realized that at that stage in my life that it wasn't, it wasn't something that I was driven to do, to be, okay, I had to be my name on the door, even though of course my dad did that and so on. And I think it's part of the process of moving through this business, is knowing what you're good at and knowing what maybe you're not as good at. And so I love doing the work there. But then this opportunity came up where with Kevin at Anderson DDB, and I'm maybe jumping ahead a bit, but I'd had some healthcare experience early in my career because Ranscombe and Company had a sister company called Healthwise, and so all of us in the Ranscombe and Company creative department worked on the Healthwise creative, right? So I knew it, and I knew that space. And then when Kevin was looking for a new creative director at Anderson DDB, he wanted someone who knew healthcare but didn't come from it, I think is the way he put it. So that opportunity came up, and I had to jump at it.
Well, that leads me into the fact that you joined Anderson DDB in about 2008, and were there from then until most recently in 2022.
Yeah.
How was it working with Kevin?
Yeah, I love working with Kevin. I love Kevin. And he's a humane person. He's a funny person. He understood the business. He was always a couple of steps ahead, so that he knew what, and he protected us from, as any good president would, from, head office or, the money side of things, so that we could focus on the work. Right. And that's a gift that not all presidents are able to do. Right. And you would know how hard that is, obviously. So it was just a really great, and plus, I call Kevin, I think I've told him this. I don't know if you remember a Christmas Carol, the famous story, but in it there's the boss that the young guy that Scrooge had when he was young called Fezziwig. And I call Kevin Fezziwig because he loves socializing. He creates an atmosphere of collegiality and good cheer. And that, again, is not an easy thing to do. And it's a great legacy that he has, that he was able to run that company for so long, so well.
I first met Kevin a number of years ago, as you know, but as soon as I met him, I liked him, and I hired him on the spot. And
right,
he and I were having a cocktail or two with Norm Rigg, if you remember Norm.
I do, yeah.
Hyatt in Toronto on Avenue Road there. And to this day, after all these years, I still love the guy.
Yeah, he's a
And
great guy.
we're good friends. And I talk to him probably every other day,
Yeah.
sometimes once a day. So I have a short video here we want to play that what Kevin has to say about you.
Okay.
His position at Anderson DDB was Associate Creative Director. Then he became National Creative Director of DDB when I was president. And he worked with me for about, I would say, between 12 and 14 years. His major strengths, and actually I call him a bit of a unicorn, because he can not only do creative for consumer accounts, but he also was heavy into health-based accounts, everything from vaccines to medicine to hip replacements, you name it. How was working at the other creative people at the agency? Well, that's Tony's strength. He believes in the youth in the business, and he actually taught part-time at Humber College. He has enough kids of his own, but he also mentored youth that wanted to get into the business. He instituted a thing where he looked at their book when they were applying for jobs, or helped them do a great book for to get in the business. How was he working with Anderson DDB clients? Tony's a gentleman. He's not a wango tango creative person. He's very level-headed. Must have been because he was a suit at one time. But his father was in the business, so he gets the practicalities of the business, that it is a business, but also strives to get the best creative in his department that he possibly can. Do you have any important, funny stories to talk to viewers about? Well, you cut this out, but Tony went in this championship thing. It's kind of a marathon. I think they call it the Mudman or something like that, where you run up hills and slop in the mud and go under barbed wire. And I used to just say to him, Tony, you're getting a little too old for doing this kind of stuff. But he also would do canoeing through Algonquin Park. And so he's and he used to be a rower on a rowing team. So he, unfortunately, unlike me, he's in great shape for his age, and he's a real good guy. And then any other information I can give you is he just is a real level-headed, great gentleman in the business. And I think real asset to wherever he works with his department.
That's lovely.
A lot of love showing there. Seriously.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. The Tough Mudder is what he was trying to say. I did a couple of those. In fact, I cut my leg open doing it, and I had to be on a high dose antibiotic for about a month after that. Everyone knows that now, so it's pretty funny. And I had to go to a new business pitch right after it, and I had like a scar on my face because there's electric wires, and I don't know if the client was impressed or not, but anyway.
Maybe it was trying out for the Marines.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Like that. In 2020, into 2022, you became Vice President, National CD for both DDB Canada as well as Anderson DDB. How was that? That might have been just kind of interesting for a short period of time.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was nice of Kevin to give me that role, and I kind of made it my own. And we were coming out of COVID, so it was a lot of still remote work, and it was great to connect with the other DDB offices. And I looked at the role as a facilitation role to help make, and sell the work that the other offices were doing. And there was an amazing amount of great work that was being done. And so I had helped sell it through, or I helped get it, entered into shows. I held weekly cross-country creative chats with everybody and those that could join. And it was neat. I had some guest speakers, and it was just a fun thing to do, and a great way to connect people from the network that may not have ever met otherwise. And so that's the benefit of the technology, and some good thing that came out of COVID was the ability to do that. So I did enjoy that. It took up a part of my day. The main job was the ECD role at Anderson DDB, but it was nice to be able to do that and see such great consumer work that was being done across the country.
Well, you also have a management certificate from IMD Business School in Switzerland. I don't know what that means, but how did that come about?
Well, I was sent there by when I was at Euro, Sharp Blackmore Euro. They sent us over to Lausanne and Lake Geneva to the IMD Business School for a few weeks to get this certificate just about leadership. And it was just before 9/11, like it was in 2000. So again, the world was different then, but it was really interesting to meet other people from the business and to hear about what their problems were and to tap into their insights into how to run departments. And they were not all creative people. Some were account people and strategists. And so it was a great learning experience. And, just to go back to something Kevin said about knowing the business, I think one of the things I say to young people that are coming into the business is this is an applied art, right? If you want to, I know you're a painter, and a good one, and that's not an applied art, but this is an applied art, and so never forget that you have to sell and persuade, and whatever you create has to move people in some way to do something. And that I think is a good thing to teach young people as they come into the business, to remind them of that. Right. If they think that it's just like madmen or throwing darts at the ceiling or beer pong all day. It's not. Like, I never found that the best ideas came at midnight. You thought they were at the time, but in the morning you were like, Jesus, that's terrible.
You won many, many awards from Cannes, the Lions, the Clios, the Clio Health, the New York Festivals, the London International Marketing Awards, RX Awards, the MM+M Globals, Art Directors Club, ADDC, and the CMAs. Have I missed any, Tony?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I've been fortunate to work on some great brands with great people, and I got to judge Cannes once, which was an amazing experience. Dan Wyden was the chair of the jury, and just the most lovely guy you'd ever meet. No ego, and again, you learn something from that too. Is the people that they would think could have a huge ego, sometimes they do, but often they don't, and that's an important thing to remember. I with respect to awards, I think, we love to win them, but there's people that have many more than I do, and there's people with fewer. And I think at the end of the day, you hope that you have enough body of work that you can be proud of, and that you had enough good swings at the good at bats to be able to make the best of those creative opportunities.
I take it that even now, after all these years of you being in this business, that you still love it.
I do. I'm still energized by it. I still enjoy it. I enjoy working with smart people and kind people, and with good clients on interesting products. I still enjoy it. I'm at Dentsu Health now, and creative director for Dentsu Health Canada, working with great people here in Canada and in the US, and around the world. And that's what it's all about. My dad, I think I said this, my dad told me early on in my career that a bad day in advertising is still better than a good day in most other businesses. And he's right. Right. There are bad days, but you know what I mean? It's always different. It's always interesting. It's always you just when you're maybe getting a little tired of one product, you get to move on to another and learn about it and see what those challenges are. And even though I've worked on hundreds of products, and obviously not as many as you, there's still there are many more out there to work on and learn. So as long as you're still learning, it's terrific. You
said earlier in our conversation that Jim Ranscom, is that how you pronounce it, was a great creative director, and that he taught you how to write proper ad copy. Is that what was special? What was special about him?
Well, he was a great writer and creative person in his own right, but it's a craft, right? Art direction is a craft, writing is a craft, copywriting is a craft, and you don't emerge from school fully formed as someone who can do this. And so he gave us the kind of the roadmap and the discipline that was required. Don't give me 3 headlines, give me 50, right? This is how you write copy. This is how you break up long copy into chunks. Maybe there's an idea in headline 5 that you wrote that isn't the headline, but it's an idea for a whole other campaign. And that ability, he taught us that ability to knock on different doors and in the conceptualizing process. And I think, that not enough, unfortunately, not enough people have mentors these days, right? And I feel badly for the young people that were coming into the business during the pandemic, especially, which was essentially learning the business from your laptop and not being around other people, right? And we're starting to get back to that now. Kevin mentioned, so I owe a great debt of gratitude to Jim, and Kevin mentioned the teaching portion, and there's a website I created called CD Feedback, which is still up there. It's not, I haven't updated it in a while, so we've got to do that. But it was a way to facilitate young creatives getting feedback from creative directors, right? And you just send them their book. There's a link there, and you send their book, your book to them. And, I think it is incumbent upon all of us that have had a good career and a long career to be able to give back and see books and give feedback to young people. Not everybody does that. Some people are too busy, or they think they're too busy. I would say they think they're too busy, right? And they shouldn't forget that someone helped them, right?
I agree with that, because one of the things, Tony, why we're doing this, of course, is for nabs.
Yes.
And the industry itself is going through, different times, and a lot of people who are in the industry still don't know enough about nabs and what nabs has done for the industry, and why it's so important to have these conversations with someone like yourself. And so I'm pleased that we're doing this. Also, you also said you learned something from Bill Sharp and Tom Blackmore. I mean, these are two guys that taught you something different also. It's just really interesting to see your career.
I was really very fortunate because Tom and Bill were very different advertising guys. Tom was more of the, get in front of the client and sell, had his infectious personality, tremendous golfer, and a lovely guy. And so that partnership between the two of them worked really well. And Bill was always 4 chess pieces ahead of everybody else. He's so brilliant. And to your point about maybe talk less, Bill would sit in the meeting and just have his arm folded and be listening and listening and listening. And then he would have the solution at the end after everyone had said what they thought was the most important thing. And so, they were really great guys to learn from as well.
One of the things that I do, and not that it's me that's doing it, I watch.
Yeah.
I watch. Maybe I have an opening in a pitch, I have an opening few words or a closing few words, and then I watch the room. I just watch the room to see what the client is in their actions, and you get a lot from, I would imagine that working with Gord DeVoe was really interesting because he was a super pitch guy and a very good.
The brilliant strategist, smartest person I've ever been around, and I've said that to many people, and just the ability, and also has a very creative mind. So he and I had a really good relationship, a couple of little tiffs along the way, but nothing major. And he would always be thinking about another way. Like, so in the creative department, we're working on this stuff, but Gord's still thinking strategically for the pitch. And he'd come in maybe a day before and said, I had another strategic thought, and that would lead somewhere else. Of course, it was maddening for us who had thought we'd done all the work. And he has I would think, a photographic memory to be able to recall and be so good in a pitch room. If a client asks a question, Gord would be able to say, oh yes, in 1999, we did this and this brand and this, and he would always have the answer. So tireless worker and absolutely brilliant.
Dentsu.
Yeah.
Why Dentsu?
Well, Dentsu is, how most there's a different way of building a healthcare network, right? So DDB would have Anderson DDB, and then they might have DDB Health, and then DDB Remedy, and so on. And so it was all disparate. It was kind of atomized. What Dentsu has been doing over the last couple of years is bringing all the different brands or health brands that they had within their network that might have been named different things and putting them all under the Dentsu Health umbrella, which I think is a terrific thing because they're building it globally, building a global presence in healthcare under Dentsu Health. It was fortuitous that I was able to join. They needed someone who came from the copy side to help run the creative department in Canada and work with people in the States. As well as we build this out. So I'm working with Susan Johnson in the US, with Coco Duhai and Eduardo Tavares down there. So we're all very senior creatives that are working together on pitches and while here in Canada, we're trying to build out the portfolio as well. So it's been a real pleasure working with the people up here and getting to know them and getting to know the Canadian healthcare landscape. Again, Tamara Carvalho runs the account group here in Toronto, and I had that experience in the Canadian pharmaceutical area earlier in my career, and then to get back into it and sort of relearn some of the things and get reacquainted with PAB. The reason I say this is because a lot of the work that we did at Anderson DDB was global or US based from Toronto. And so this is a bit of both, which is more Canadian work. So it's great. And there's a really talented team there.
Do you think that creative is still very important or king in our world?
I think it still is. As long as there's a strong strategic underpinning. Clients want creative solutions. And the more creative the solution, the more likely it's to break through. Now, there is a different level of creativity that may be that level of acceptance for each client, and you have to kind of find that what is acceptable to them and the most creative solution within what what's allowed. That's my dog barking. In between what's allowed within that space, and I say what's allowed because PAB, which is here the regulatory body here in Canada, has a pretty firm opinion as to what's acceptable and what isn't. So you have to work within those parameters, just like you do the FDA in the States.
Right. Now, being a creative guy, we've seen agencies like Rethink and Broken Heart Love Affair and Zach and No Fix Express. I mean, they tend to be winning all the awards these days. So they're all independent. And I know probably why, part of the reasons, but I'm not saying that the big independents are they do better work, but they do different work. Maybe there's a little more freedom. I don't know. But what do you think?
Well, I've worked at independents and I've worked at big multinationals. And I think maybe with the independents, they have the independence to perhaps pursue the type of client that they really, really want, as opposed to maybe being pressured into pitching something that might not be perfect for them, because you have to hit a certain financial target. But I haven't found that it was creatively constraining to work at a big multinational. I mean, I never had someone saying no from above. So I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of awards being won by the multinationals too.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the accounts you've worked on, because not all of them have been medical accounts or health accounts.
No, for sure.
Carrier-Chisholm, Sony, Suzuki, Holt Renfrew, Dell, Coors, Red Lobster, Rogers, Volvo, Mercedes-Benz, Greenpeace, the Ontario Jockey Club, Tourism Canada, Pfizer, Rexall Drugs, Bayer, Swiss Chalet. But I do have a funny spot here that I want to play about non-surgery options. So let's play that spot, which I thought was very well done.
Please tell me what you're thinking. I wanna know what's on your mind, or you're gonna get a piece of mind.
It's time to end the standoff and start talking openly about your birth control options. Start the conversation with your doctor by asking about dependable, non-surgical, non-pill contraception that you can both be comfortable with.
I still laugh when I see that spot. It's great.
Well, I do too, because it was a spot called Snip.
Snips and knots, and that came from an insight that Gord, I think, had, and that there's a battle going on in the House over contraception and whether men should get a vasectomy or women should get their tubes tied. And so that was driving to a website for a client. It was an unbranded spot driving to a website. So the director, Mark Gilbert, brilliant, and Enza Petrolo and Ron Bach were the creative team on it. And it was just terrific. Yeah.
Well, so simply, I mean, the part about snipping on the, I mean,
and he crosses his legs.
One of the best spots that I thought they did was for Shreddies, and the guy stopped the line as the Shreddies were coming out because one of the Shreddies was turned on its side. It was called New Diamond Shreddies.
That's brilliant.
Think of that today as how brilliant was that to come up with
so brilliant.
Spot. And that snip comes in there the same way.
Yeah.
So for all the years that I've been in business,
and that was something from nothing, because the client hadn't planned on doing a spot like that, and we sort of sold in the idea that an unbranded spot would be a great way to do it.
I like I say in this business over the years that there was always some clients and brands that I enjoyed more than others, and I thought that those particular clients always got better work. Was there any particular client that you love working with that you can talk about that you like better than others? I mean, I just don't know. I mean,
I like most of my clients. It's easier to talk about a couple without naming names that were more difficult. There were so many good ones. The most are good. The difficult ones tend to be the ones that want to do it themselves, right? That think that they know how to do it. I worked on a financial services brand once where the president, who was a lovely guy, but thought he could do everything because he'd never been told that he couldn't. And so he decided that his idea would win. And so even though it lost in research, and we had to research and it lost terrifically, we still had to create the ads. And in fact, and it was just painful, but this is the business, right? And so, and it was, the ad was so cringeworthy that they parodied it on This Hour Is 22 Minutes, which was, I don't think, what he wanted.
Oh, no. But you did have another favorite client that you love working on, was Canada's Wonderland, and the client was Scott McConnell. So let's play that spot called Punching In.
Was great. That was at ACLC, and Scott was a wonderful client. He would be the guy who you'd present 4 ideas and he'd say, we're going to do them all. And we would just do them all. And I think he's out in BC now. I think he runs the aquarium out in, I think, if memory serves. Yeah. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to say that Roger Iyer and Jason Losey were the creative team on that. It was terrific spot. I brought my son to the shoot when he was just little, and he was just like, it was the best thing he'd ever seen. And we only got 3 or 4 takes with the stunt guy before he was like, that's enough. So we had to get it.
I remember doing a commercial with Raymond Burr, if you remember him.
I do.
On the Ironside, and a lot of the directors want to get another take, and I don't know how many takes this one was, but they one more for safety, Mr. Burke. No, you've got it. Let's move on.
Yes.
Which I thought was,
no.
Okay, let's move on. Here's a couple of things that you did for Metro. It was a newspaper campaign, but it was like I'm only showing this because it's like long copy.
Yeah.
Let's play that. Let's show that. The plot thickens.
The plot thickens. So this is to my point about Jim Ranscombe, and the ability to teach us how to do these long copy ads. And we did long copy work for Metro Works and for Canadian Opera Company as well, and for Sick Kids Hospital. And it's a dying art because there's a less appetite for it now. I used to see books. I've seen books recently, copywriter books with no writing in them. And I've had to say, it's not all a visual pun. You have to show that you can write. So you got to have writing in your book, headline writing, and some ads with copy, and then I make them do a long copy ad, maybe not that long, but 500 or 600 words to show that you can actually write. And it's too bad that there's not more of that being done, because people consume information that way. You know, half the people visually consume it, others like to read, and there's a place for it. We did have done ads at ACLC there was a great campaign that was done for Mount Pleasant group of cemeteries, you know, like just about funeral pre-planning, that was playful and fun. So it can be done. I don't see a lot of it anymore, which is too bad. I keep trying. I keep trying to sell it, though.
I always had a line for a funeral parlor that says, "We're the last to let you down."
Well,
Yeah. So over the years, I've had an opportunity of representing, working with a lot of clients, like lucky enough to work with McDonald's and Budweiser. And there's a story about Budweiser going forward, which we might ask.
Yeah.
Volkswagen, TELUS, Subaru, Tourism Canada.
Mm-hmm.
If you had any, the question would be, what makes a great client?
Clients that listen to you and respect your opinion, and who want to have a conversation. Those are the best. They want to do good work, and they don't let process get in the way of that good work. Those are the best clients. So it doesn't get tested into the ground, or the testing is done for the right reasons, the right kind of testing. You know, I know the creatives have lost the testing fight a long time ago in the agencies, but so there's a lot of testing now, and I understand why that happens. But the clients that are the best are the ones that include you as part of the process. You really are a partner, and you're both going in the same direction to get good work. They're not trying to force their ideas on you or kill your ideas through a million different ways. And like you just said a few minutes ago, the best clients get the best work. They do, because they let their agency do the job that they've been hired to do.
I used to have in the old days, not quite madmen, but around that period, when clients would come into our office early in the morning unexpectedly, and they just wanted to share some time. They didn't care at that time. I know you're doing a great job. I'm not talking to you about advertising. You want to talk something that was bothering them, or thought we might have had the answers for them, which had nothing to do with advertising.
Well, I just think that the best part of their day is the part of the day they're working with their agency. Like, we don't see the other stuff that they're dealing with. They love coming. They love coming to the office. They love talking about advertising, as opposed to the 95% of the rest of the stuff they're having to do, which is probably not a lot of fun. The advertising is the showbiz and the fun part. And so we should remember that.
You don't get that much today with the working 2 days a week or 3 days a week with clients coming in. I kind of miss that. So
yeah, me too.
I'm going to get to a couple of questions here that have been asked by the audience. So how do you see artificial intelligence impacting the creative aspects of our industry, and what opportunities or challenges do you anticipate? You know, with GPT, ChatGPT,
Yeah.
I've actually used it.
Well,
it's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable, and it's happening in real time now. I don't think. Well, look. So let's just step back for a second. There's been stuff like this coming for a while, in terms of, hey, you can create a spot with B-roll film, and here's your B-roll, and you can parse it together and create. And companies can create spots with stock music and stock photography, right? So that's been happening for a while. This part, you know, with the AI and the ability to create drawings and so on and so forth, I think is going to be a challenge for those who are storyboard artists, because I know our director friends who are able to type in something into different programs and get the drawing that they want without having to go to a storyboard artist. So that's a problem for the storyboard artist. And I don't know what the solution is there, other than hopefully it's not as specific yet as it could be. So there's some time for them to figure out how to deal with that. On the writing front, listen, I don't think what's going to happen with it right now is that everything's at a B level. If it was a grade for a school paper, the ChatGPT thing would be a B, right? And so I don't think that they can write scripts yet that are interesting. They can't do humor. They can't do all of that. So I think we're safe for a while there. But on the art side, there's, you know, How long is it until a client can say, I want a spot that does this, that has this, that so on and so forth, plug it in and something comes out the other end if they're not, and for a client that's not concerned that much about the quality of the work or the originality of the work. So it's a bit scary.
And the other thing that I'll ask you a question on is because we touched on a bit about Budweiser a bit earlier on Bud Light, and I often wonder whether or not the marketing director went off on their own, and it was never seen by the president of the organization, because that commercial they did on Bud Light really affected the brand, and I don't know whether the brand will ever get back to where it was. I mean, do you have an opinion on that? Just out of curiosity.
Well, which one are you talking about, Frank?
Bud Light, where you got one of the guys shooting the shotgun at the Bud Light cans. Did you not see that?
I did. I think that sometimes this happens in the business, right? Where someone just goes and does something, and then you're having to backpedal. So that someone's gone rogue or whatever. But I don't. Mostly, there's processes in place to stop that from happening.
You would think so, because I know that Ford has had some problems lately, and so is Target's having some problems lately. It was almost like somebody is not paying attention to what's being said.
Well, with Target, are you talking about where they had gay pride stuff in the store and then people were coming in and tearing it down? Yeah. So that the problem there, I would say the problem there is the Target backed down, right? And so then it just creates more conflict. A lot of this stuff is progressive, and the companies are trying to be more inclusive, and then they're running into sectors of their target audience who aren't happy about that and are going in and ripping down signage. And then so the worst thing you can do is cave to that, right? And so that ends up giving oxygen to that side of the argument. So all I have to do is go in and tear down signage, and then I'm going to get my way. I don't think that's the right thing.
You can be 50% right and 50% wrong on any given day, right?
Well, right. And also, it's let's be honest, it's been a certain way for a long time, and it's okay that, there's progress and that brands are advertising in different ways and that more people are feeling included in that advertising. I would just say that make sure it's coming from the right place, make sure that it's not performative, make sure that as a company, you really believe it and are doing more than just putting signage up in a store or doing something once a year. You should really actually believe it and have it infused as part of your brand story, beyond a performative once a year ad.
I agree. It's kind of, if you're a purpose-based company, be a purpose-based company.
Right.
So the last question I'm going to ask you, Tony, is what are the most desirable skills and qualities that you look for in hiring new people?
So we talked a little bit about it before, which is when you say you listen and you read the room and so on. I want to hire people that are socially adept, that listen, that have curious minds, that aren't afraid to talk, and who are not arrogant or egotistical, because there's nothing worse in this business, in my opinion, than egomaniacs who start to believe their own press, right? And always remember that it's only advertising, right? If you don't forget that it's only advertising, you'll be able to do great advertising and have a long career. But if you think that the world is waiting for your next ad or for your genius to come into the room, then you're going to be out of the business pretty quickly. So I look for people that are good people, that have a sense of humor and are able to connect with other people and face to face or by Zoom. And those are the people that can last, and have to be able to accept rejection, because if you can't accept rejection, you're in the wrong business too, because most of the stuff we do gets killed, right? So,
the comedian Bill Burr?
Yeah, he's hilarious.
Hilarious. He was being interviewed the other day, which is very funny. He said, comedians are out there to break the mold. We're here to say something controversial.
Yes.
If you don't like what we have to say, don't come.
Don't come. Right.
I'm here to say something that you're going to laugh at, or you may not like it. But if you don't like it, you don't have to come.
Exactly right.
It's been a very interesting conversation today, Tony. I really appreciate you taking the time to help tell the story about your life, as well as helping us raise funds for NABs and the awareness. Hopefully a lot of young people will see this and have a role to play in our industry, because I think there's a lot of life in it yet. I still enjoy it. I go to work, as I say, every day. So on behalf of NABs, thank you very much for your time today.
Well, thank you for having me, Frank. It's a great honor and a real privilege. And thank you for spending the time with me. Great to see you.